All right, so I would like to show you the new extension I just wrote for Fantasy Grounds, Story Template Pro. It takes the stock story templates in Fantasy Grounds and adds a ton of functionality to them to make really powerful story templates. So without further ado, I want to jump right in because we have a lot of ground to cover. So first of all, this is what comes in Fantasy Grounds with the story templates, and it's fantastic, but it has a lot of limitations which we're about to overcome. And under Story Template Pro, this is what we're adding. We're adding column referencing, custom naming, internal rolling, internal referencing, column referencing, internal column referencing, and hidden roles, which is a lot to go over, so we'll jump into it. But do stick around for the end because there are 3 bonus capabilities that are going to pop out in the end, and one of them is probably the most exciting of the entire extension, so stick around. So let's take a look at what comes in Fantasy Grounds and just do a quick little review over that. So this is how it currently works. We have what I call a table callout with this square brackets. And if you call that, if you have a table with 4 columns, like table A here, we get all of the columns vomited out and they all have these semicolons between them. If we then reference it with the alligator mouth references, we will get all 4 columns again. There's a separate way we can do this, and that's a column callout, is what I call it, where we use a pipe symbol and a number to say we want just column 3. And then if we reference the table later, we just get column 3 again. The problem is you either get all the columns or you get one column with no relation to the others. So if we later wanted column 4, we could get column 4 from that table, but it wouldn't necessarily be from the same row, and so column 4 wouldn't be related to column 3 in a meaningful way. And that's a problem when you're writing good stories. So that brings us to column referencing. Under Story Template Pro, if you do a table callout using the square brackets, you get all 4 columns. Notice there are no semicolons anymore. I removed them because I don't like them. Now, however, if we want to get column 3 from that result, we can call using the hashtag or pound symbol or number sign or the waffle, whatever you want to call it. I'll call it a hashtag for now. Hashtags instead of the brackets and the same pipe symbol and column, we will get column 3 from that result. And later, if we want column 4, we can use the same syntax in order to get column 4, and it's from the previous row of table A. So they are relational and they make sense. And so let's get into that. Why is this powerful? So let's say table A has got a race and a gender and a name and a pronoun. Now, under the stock way, we could do this. Silhouette of A appeared in the tavern doorway, ringed in moonlight from outside. They stride in and take a seat next to you. They tell you their name as they motion for the bartender. Now, you wouldn't use table A in this instance for this. You would come up with a different way, but bear with me because I'm illustrating a point. If we use table A here, we have to structure this paragraph so that we're using pronouns that work for both genders, and we're being very generalized so that it reads correctly later. If we did roll on A with this, we would get the silhouette of a gnome female Gribbles. She appeared in the tavern doorway with the semicolons in between. Not ideal, and it can be better. Now you could do this. You could use multiple tables, and that's what I have done in the past, and it's the best way to do it currently without Story Template Pro. But continuity issues arise. So let's say we have the same paragraph and we use different tables. The silhouette of a race appears in the tavern doorway, ringed in the moonlight from outside. Pronoun strides in and takes a seat next to you. The names, random name. Pronoun says as pronoun motions for the bartender. And what we end up with is the silhouette of an elf appears in the tavern doorway. She strides in. Her name is Frank. And what we got here was a female elf with a human man's name, which isn't always what we want. So, with Story Template Pro and column referencing, we can say the silhouette of a table A column 1 appeared in the tavern doorway, ringed with moonlight from the outside. Column 4 strides in and takes a seat next to you. The name's column 3. And what we end up with is the silhouette of a gnome appeared in the tavern doorway, ringed in moonlight from the outside. She strides in and takes a seat next to you. The name's Gribbles, she says, as she motions for the bartender. And so we can build stories that connect to one another and make sense, which can be done in a million different ways, and it's just very, very powerful. It's one of my favorite things that we've done with Story Template Pro. Not my favorite thing. That's coming in the end. It goes without saying, though, that in order to reference previously rolled columns, we have to roll on those columns first. But what happens if table A had 20 columns? Then you don't want a bunch of gibberish thrown into your story in the middle of nowhere so you can reference the columns later. So we hide it. And we're going to jump in our listing all the way to the bottom real quick to hidden roles using the question mark and talk about that for a second because it applies to a lot of these. So stock table callout, A, gets us the 4 columns with the semicolons. The Story Template Pro callout gets us without the semicolons. But if we do a Story Template Pro hidden callout, we just add a question mark to the beginning of the table name. It doesn't print anything, but all of the columns and results are still stored in referenceable columns. So if we've got a giant table with tons of columns about everything about an MPC, and we want to reference those columns, we can put a question mark when we call the table, and then we can call all the columns as much as we want. And in our finished generated story, we won't get a giant 20 column block of results that are kind of gibberishy. Hidden feature works with a lot of things. It works with regular callouts, custom naming, and internal rolling, as well as one other one that we'll get to in the end. That's one of the bonus ones. But it basically works with callouts, not with references. There's no real reason you would want to hide a reference, but a callout for sure. Custom naming. Let's take a look. All right, so under stock, using a table callout and then using the exact same table callout, well, that works. But then if you reference it later, you get everything you called before. And here we've got a little illustration. We called the table color blue. Called color again, we got yellow. Later we reference it, we get blue-yellow. And that's never what you want. So now you can custom name them. So we've called color. We've made a storage name or a custom name of eyes. We called color again and made another storage or custom name of teeth. And later I can just reference eyes and I will get blue. So this is really powerful. Notice the syntax. I think the next slide here we've got a little blown up syntax for this. It's basically a table callout in square brackets. It uses the colons to make itself unique. So as you enter, it has a colon, then the table name, and then a colon separates the table name from what you want to store it as. So here we've rolled an NPC 4 times and made an NPC spy, bartender, jester, and vagrant. And then you can refer to those columns all over the place. Just a note there, there's no internal brackets around the table name. It's already in those external brackets. So that's how that works. It works with hidden results. So here we've done a hidden, we've put the question mark in front of the table name. NPC, we've called it bad guy. It won't print anything about bad guy, but later we want to call the second column of bad guy and we get his name, Jimmy, and it works. Internal rolling. Okay, so this one gets a little bit crazy, so bear with me. With internal rolling, which table we roll on ultimately is decided by tables within it. So how is that? So as it says here, how is that different from nested tables now? So what we do currently under stock is we'll take a race table, and inside race there will be gender tables, and inside gender tables there will be name tables. And that's great, it works. But then later, if you reference race, you get the name from before. And if that was a first and last name, maybe in 2 columns or maybe in the same column, you're just always going to get that result. There's no way to separate the two and use them. So by call out internal rolling, what we've done is we have placed 2 tables, race and gender, inside a parent table. And what will happen is race will resolve, gender will resolve, and then it will take a look at what table has resulted. And in this case, let's say that race rolls elf and gender rolls female. Then you see what we'll have here between the colons is a table called elf female name. And we're going to store it in a custom name, bartender. So now you can not only reference, each column of the result individually, so I can get just her first name later, or just her last name later, or his. But then the alligator reference of bartender also gives you just first and last. Here's the syntax up close. It's just like custom naming. In fact, it's exactly the same. The only difference here is we're putting tables inside of the table name in order to come up with what the ultimate parent table we want to roll on is. This also works with hidden results using the question mark right after the first colon. So then, call out internal referencing and call out internal column referencing. They're very similar, so we're going to hit them both at once. So this is using the results of previously rolled tables to determine which table to roll on now. So as an example, you stumble upon a race settlement, so we're rolling on the race table for the first time. The mayor, an old race, so we're going to reference that table roll. named, and here is where we get into our internal referencing. We're going to take what we rolled on race before, insert it here, and the resulting table we will roll on. So if the table originally rolled on dwarf, dwarf will be inserted into that table callout, and you will get dwarf name as the table callout, and you'll roll upon that table. So it might output as you stumble upon a dwarf settlement. The mayor, an old dwarf named Britkoff Stonefist, greets you because it rolled on dwarf name in the end. And this is incredibly powerful. I'm very, very excited about this because it can really make the stories congruent and give a lot of continuity, and so it makes sense as you're going through the story template. It also works with column references, so we can use column 7 from NPC name, because that might be their race, column 7, and then they'll roll on elf name. And you can use that in a million different ways to be deterministic with which tables you're rolling. So if you want to roll combinations, at the bottom here, you can see we've got a previous result with alligator from a normal table of race, and then we're going to use column 2 from NPC, and that might roll on human female name, for instance. So I'm using names a lot in this just because I like to keep it the same so that we understand what's happening, but this can be used for anything, MacGuffin, or a story plot line, or an enemy, or some sort of a city feature. It's the list is almost endless. So, coming back, you've stuck with it this far, and so here are bonus things that were not listed in the front, and I'm very excited about them. The first is date calls with formatting, and the second, the one I'm most excited about, is cross-template referencing. So let's dig right into date calls. So this is going to place a date within your generated story. So you have two choices. You can use date, or you can use FG date. Date will get the date from your computer system, and FG date will get the date from the calendar within Fantasy Grounds. And this is how it's used. You just literally the word date, a colon, and then whatever format you would like it to be output in, or FG date, a colon, and whatever format. And what this is going to do is, well, I've got some examples here coming up. To do the FG date format, you've got to have a calendar module loaded, obviously. And right now, because of my limitations in my coding abilities, it's set up to use the Gregorian calendar right now. So fantasy calendars, I'm not sure what compatibility it has with those, so it might be something that comes up later. Then let's talk about the format section of this. There are a lot of different ways you can format this, and I'll have some examples here in a minute. But FG date has a little bit fewer formatting options than standard date. So here's some examples. 2 M's is going to give you a 2-digit representation of the month, so 11. 3 M's will give you a 3-character representation of the month, so NOV for November. If you spell out the word month, it gives you the entire spelled out month, November, and the same with day. If you spell out day, it will give you the day of the week. But if it's just DD, it will give you a 2-digit representation or a digit representation of the day. And these, as you can see over here, date, colon, day spelled out, / 3 M's / DD will give you Sunday, comma, NOV 28th. The one below, Sunday, comma, November 28th. So it is formatted a little bit. And then I added one in there for fun called Old School, which with this example would give you Sunday, 28th of November in the year of our Lord 2021. FG date does not have that option because I didn't have the time to implement that. But this is date, so you can add that to your generated stories as well. And now for the piece de la resistance. I don't speak French. Cross-template referencing. This was the big nut to crack, and I'm super excited about it. So how does this work? Story template 1. We have a cross-template callout, and here's the syntax for that. It's the curly braces. So curly brace, colon, just like the other ones that have been added in Pro, the table name, a colon, and a storage name. So here we have table A, and we're going to store it in B as an example. Now if we go ahead and call that, it will work just like a normal table call that we've custom named. It will print all the columns that are in there. But they are stored, what I call, in the cloud. They are not stored in this story template. They're stored somewhere safe and far away. And now let's say we have a second story template, completely separate story template. It's not even related to this one, but it's got a call out inside of it, a cross template reference. And that's just simply with curly braces around the table name. I'm sorry, not around the table name, around the storage name. That should be a B there, and that's my fault. But what will happen here is it will take it from the cloud, bring it out, and retrieve those results that you've gotten before and print out all 4 columns in a completely different story template. This also works with column referencing. So here we got the references with the curly braces. Once again, that should be a B because it's your storage name is what you're using to retrieve this data. It comes from the cloud, and we only get column 4 from what we rolled in the other story template. And this will persist until you either do a reload of Fantasy Grounds or until you end the session. So those things will be stored for you. This also works with the hidden modifier, the question mark, so that you can roll in a table and still use all those results across many story templates. And this is extremely powerful. This is passing parameters in so that we can generate a town in one and a bad guy and say he owns a bar, and we've got a link to a bar generator there, and the bar can come up and it can say it's Bill's bar, and we can talk all about Bill in that bar or whatever we want, and we can have our story templates really speak to each other. I'm very excited about cross-template referencing. And I did say in the beginning that there was going to be 3 bonuses. So if you were paying attention, there is. And the third is the table column limit has been increased to 30. So now it was 20. So now I've added an additional 10 columns so you're able to really get the full use out of column referencing and really kind of flesh out these tables. And it just increases the power of everything that's been put in here. So that brings us to the end of the presentation for Story Template Pro. What I will do is I'm going to have a second video, part 2, where I'm going to have Fantasy Grounds up, and I'll show you where the rubber meets the road and how these look inside of Fantasy Grounds and how they work between story templates and how things are stored and how they're retrieved and ways that can be used. So if you're curious into how this works, go ahead and click on that video too. And thank you for sticking with me and watching. I'm very excited about this project. I'm very excited about how I'll be able to use it, but more so how everyone else will be able to use it. Thank you so much.